Hello, and welcome to my new webinar series geared towards the questions that partners are asking and where Microsoft can help. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the cloud, or more specifically, the Microsoft Cloud Solution Provider Program. Joining me this week will be Jan Mikler, a partner technology strategist for OCP and an expert in the CSP program. Jan, would you like to give us a brief introduction?
Thank you for that introduction, Dan. I work in our One Commercial Partner organization, specifically with our managed service provider partners. Our Cloud Solution Provider program is one of my specialities.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that by this point, our listeners are aware of what the cloud is and what it means for business. To that, we're not going to go over old ground today, but focus this conversation on the opportunities presented to our partners by means of the CSP program. Now, Jan, as I mentioned before, you are regarded as an expert in this area. So would you mind spending a few moments taking us through the program?
It is important to understand that the Cloud Solution Provider program, or CSP, is not a new technical product from Microsoft, but instead it's a commercial framework that allows our partners to resell Microsoft Public Cloud services on a subscription basis. When I say Microsoft Public Cloud, I don't just mean Azure. I also mean Office 365, Dynamics 365, which are SaaS-based solution. I also want to stress that this is a subscription base with no pre-commit required, and customers can increase and decrease their consumption depending on their needs. CSP's uniqueness is that it ensures that the partner owns the full relationship with the end customer when it comes to setting the price, doing the billing, providing support, and also wrapping in additional services to the customer offerings. It is down to the partner to provision and manage the subscription on behalf of the customer, as well as being the first point of contact for any support queries. When we talk about additional services, it really is down to the creativity of the partner to decide. For example, we have some partners who provide solutions centered around a banking application. Some bundle in solutions from third parties, and others again might be delivering a remote desktop solution that is targeted at a specific industry. The more unique you make your offering, the more stickiness you create with your customers. Another way to look at it is to compare it against our other licensing models. As you can see from this slide, all our traditional licensing models have been focusing on just the selling and transacting of licenses. With CSP, you as the partner cover the entire life cycle of the customer engagement of selling the solution, transacting the contract, managing the solution in life, supporting any issues, and scaling it up or out to other potential customers.
So you were saying that the partner effectively white labels our product and from there ties it in with its own unique services to create a bespoke solution with a continued revenue stream. Brilliant. So what are some of the sales scenarios that I may use alongside the CSP program?
The CSP program is great for all partner types that are selling Microsoft cloud-based services to their customers on a subscription basis, especially when they add value or intellectual property into that solution. We have many service providers and systems integrators in the program whom deliver a fully fledged solution with a fully managed service to the customers. If we think about the systems integrator, they would traditionally be charging a customer to build them a solution or do a migration, e.g. from Exchange on-premise to Office 365, and that would be the end of the engagement. With CSP, they can now easily add on the full ongoing in-life management of the solution with a monthly billing to the customer, thus enabling a whole new revenue stream without having to make big capital investment into large data centers. The key takeaway message for the partners is that the more additional value services you can add, like managed servers, maybe a full DevOps CI/CD pipeline, or data insight, the more profitable you are going to be as a partner.
Okay, so as I understand it, we have two different solution tiers when it comes to the CSP program, direct and indirect. Could you perhaps spend a few moments explaining the differences between these tiers and if there are any limitations that we should be aware of? I guess that what I want to understand is how a partner would choose one over the other and select the tier that's right for them.
There are two models for CSP, CSP Direct and CSP Indirect. In the direct model, the CSP partner has a direct relationship with Microsoft in which Microsoft bills the CSP Direct partner and the CSP Direct partner bills the customer directly. This requires the partners to provide all the billing and support to the customer, so it will be expected the partner has some kind of automated billing system and also a support structure that can cover the services offered ideally on a 24/7 basis. The indirect model works similarly, but with an additional tier in the structure. Here, the CSP distributor holds the relationship with Microsoft and gets the bill from Microsoft. The CSP distributor then has a channel of partners known as indirect resellers, and then go out and sell the solutions to the customers. The CSP distributor provides billing services and support services to the indirect resellers. Think of the CSP distributors as your classic disties, who are often working with hardware partners and are focused on driving a scalable program. There aren't very many of the CSP distributor partners, and we rarely add new ones. The great advantage of being a CSP indirect reseller rather than a CSP direct partner is that you're very quickly to get set up and there are no credit checks that happen with Microsoft. Typically, you can get set up in a matter of hours or days rather than several weeks, which is the norm for a CSP direct partner. It is also worth pointing out that you can be both a CSP direct partner and a CSP indirect reseller at the same time. Some partners use this method for them to break into new regions where they don't normally have a reseller agreement. I also want to mention about the support option for CSP partners. It is a very important area for Microsoft and our customers. There are currently 3 levels of support available: what I would call basic, advanced support for partner, and premium support for partner. As you move towards the right of the slide, the support gets better. All support tickets from Microsoft relating to CSP must be raised in the Partner Center portal initially by the partner, and then they get triaged or escalated depending on the support levels you've bought. I do also want to point out that as a CSP Direct partner, it will become a requirement from the 31st of August to have either advanced support for partners or premium support for partners. This is to ensure that the customers of Microsoft products can be sure that they get the right level of support required from our partners.
Okay, so that sounds great. We now have a better understanding of the program, the framework, and the provider tiers. So can we discuss how we get started?
Well, Dan, I'm glad you asked, and the best way for me to show you. First of all, let's go to Partner Center in our browser. Always make sure to use in-private browsing to avoid any conflicting credentials from elsewhere. First of all, you can go to Partner with Us Cloud Solution Provider program to find out more about the program. Here you can find indirect distributors to work with or apply for a CSP Direct status. As you go in here, you can filter it based on which country you reside in. So for the UK, you would select to filter on the UK, and here you can find a list of all the UK-based indirect distributors. The other thing to call out is around the documentation, and there are 2 key areas. One is the Partner Center help documentation, and the other one is around the software development kit. So first of all, we look at the Partner Center help documentation. As you go in here, you will find out more about each of the most commonly asked questions. So things like how to manage customers, how to add new customers, and how to do some of the most commonly known tasks. One thing I really particularly want to point out is about the roles and responsibilities within the partner portal, like the RBAC roles. You can find these by going into Manage Your Partner Dashboard Accounts, click on Create User Accounts and Assign Permissions, and in here you will find a list of all the most commonly used roles. In here, there are a couple of roles I really want to point out. For example, admin on behalf, and one of them is called admin on behalf of. And this right is what is used when you're trying to manage a customer subscription. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but it's really something to look out for. The admin agent has this role and a number of other ones as well. The other thing I'd like to call out is that you need to have somebody who is a global admin. So when your subscription is first created, you will have a single global admin. The first thing to do is to make sure you add in at least one more. Typically, I recommend people to add in at least another 2 and take the original admin account and lock it away in a safe. That way, you can ensure that if people leave or if people lose their password for any reason, they can still gain access to the Partner Center and you can still create customer accounts, which is absolutely critical to your operations. The other area of documentation to look at is around the software development kit. So if you click Learn More, go to Developer Reference, this is where you will find out everything about how you integrate into the CSP portal from your own native tools. So this is where you can find some of the samples of most commonly used. As a CSP Direct or a CSP Indirect partner, you will need to come in here and you will need to do this kind of integration work in order to hook it into your billing and into your internal processes and in order to automate all of your work. And that is what's going to drive your efficiencies as you go forward as a CSP Direct partner. When you sign into the dashboard, I'm going to be signing into a sandbox environment version of this. So I won't be able to see absolutely everything that you would be able to see in the full version of it. The first screen you're presented with is the welcome screen. And in the welcome screen, you will find most of the commonly used tasks that you find in here. You can, for example, have a look at your add new customers. You can view your existing customers, but you can also go in and view your partner profile. In your partner profile, you will be finding all your billing details and all the details that matters for Microsoft and us. So here you can find out your main contacts, your organization, and you can also have the opportunity to sign in and try new features. It's more like a beta version of the CSP portal. If you click on View Business Profile, you will be able to see all the details about your company as you present yourself in the Partner Center. And you can have different profiles for different regions where you're allowed to sell. So in here, you can see an example of what it looks like for United Kingdom. And here you can put in custom URLs for your website and a way of advertising yourself out to the wider community. This is an area where we'll be driving our customers towards, and we will then be able to drive more sales and resell leads through to you and your business. The other thing to have a look at in the portal is around the pricing and offers. If you click on Sell, Pricing and Offers, you can find all the price lists for all the SKUs that are available on CSP. There are license-based price lists, which are things like Office 365 and EMS, and the usage-based services like Azure. You can also find in here more about reserved instances and find the pricing for those. The other thing I want to call out as well is you can find additional documents in here, like the Financial Services Amendment. And the Financial Services Amendment is used for when you're selling into banking industry. So if you have customers that are in the banking industry, they are often asking for this additional document for you to provide when you are selling and transacting via CSP. In here, you can also find a full list of the catalog, and you can also find specific promotions that we might be running for periods of time. For example, things like doing an additional SKU for Office 365 or some discount we might have. In here, you'll also find the support sections. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you as the CSP provider have to raise tickets on behalf of your customers. You do that by going into Customer Requests, clicking on this, and as you do that, you'll be asked to highlight which customer it is you are trying to create a ticket for. Type in the name of the customer, and I'll be using Meetler, which I have a customer name for. And here you can find the subscription that I've got. I currently have no open tickets, but you can also track any tickets you might have. So if you click on New Request, you can create a new Microsoft Azure ticket or Cloud App Security tickets. You can also find out about the service health, which is the currently ongoing issues that might be in the systems. These are all examples of issues that are currently going, so you can see that there's something going on because, as I said, it is a service, it's a sandbox environment. You can also find out about service notifications, which are up and coming and scheduled service outages that are coming. We also have partner support requests, and this is where you, as the CSP partner, would raise any tickets running problems you might have. Maybe you have problems getting to an API, maybe you have some documentation that isn't right and you want to have altered. Maybe you have problems doing something in the portal, in which case click on here and you will be able to raise a support ticket for yourself. The other section we want to have a look at is billing. Now in my sandbox environment, because it is a sandbox environment, there are actually no details in here because I don't have access to it. However, in your environment, you will in here find your latest bill that you received from Microsoft, and you will also find something called reconciliation files. Reconciliation files are what you are using to find out all the details about the individual services that are being billed for each of your customers. This can be a very handy, useful way of breaking down the billing structure for your customers on an itemized way. By clicking on Azure Spending, you can actually put quotas on your customers' subscriptions. So in here, what you would do is you'd find a customer name, you type in that and search them out, and then you would type in what is the maximum spend you're going to allow for them for that month. Now, these aren't quotas in the usual sense. These are quotas in the sense that you will get notified when you reach a certain limit. So let's say you've said for a customer that they can only spend up to $2,000. At that point, you will get a notification as the administrator. Once you receive that notification, you can then go and act upon it. Microsoft has a policy of not blocking the subscription because we don't know what the impact would be of blocking that subscription. Having a hard block and stopping services could have a profound business impact on the customer, and that wouldn't be the right thing to do based on the decision that you might have made. So therefore, it's a soft limit and you will get a notification. The next area we want to have a look at is the analysis area. And in here, you can look at the usage across all of your accounts, both on a licensing point of view and also the consumption of those licenses. So for example, how much churn are you having? How many customers do you have? How long are those subscriptions been in for? So this is a way for you to analyze your business and your customers and see how well they are performing. You can look at active subscriptions you might have and anything you might have suspended. But this is a great way for you to improve your business by really digging into the data that is driving it. If you click on license usage analysis, you can find even more in-depth information about the products that you've sold. And this is typically how many licenses have you sold to a customer versus how many are they actually consuming. And that's a really useful metric because this will tell you all about how well you are driving consumption in that account. Of course, you want to strive for a number around 100%. 100% will tell you everything, will tell you that you've sold them everything, and you can go back and have another discussion about do they need other licenses, or are there other products you might want to sell to them. It also means that the customer is getting maximum value out of the products because they are not spending more money than they're actually consuming. Before we start talking about the customers and adding a customers, it's really important to understand how admin on behalf of works. When you saw me demonstrate this product so far, you've seen me log into my partner AAD tenant, albeit in a sandbox environment. And that's an isolated AAD tenant. As I create a new customer, I will be creating a brand new AAD tenant for that customer. And in that process of creating that AAD tenant, I am assigned a number of rights into that tenant's roles. So I am a member of the Tenant Admin role, and I am the owner of the Azure CSP subscriptions that it creates. This allows me to manage the customer's AAD tenant without actually having any credentials in it. The other thing to notice is that the customer themselves don't actually have any credentials into their tenant, and that is by design. You can, of course, assign those rights later on if you want to, but this is a fundamental piece of how CSP works. As a CSP partner, I can manage and monitor their tenant, but I don't actually need to be in the tenant itself. This allows my customer, if they wanted to, shift that tenant over to another CSP partner should they need to for whatever reason, or for you to take a CSP tenant from somebody else. And you can do that without actually having any access rights into their tenants. So now we're going to create a customer here as well. So there are two ways you can do it. You can either click Add New Customers on the front page, but my personal preference is to go into the customer sections and have a look in here. So as you can see here is a list of all the existing customers in this sandbox environment. Click on Add Customer and you can now populate it. As you can see here, because this is a sandbox environment in the US, I can only create a customer in the US. You will be able to see whatever you can create in your region. So for me this time, I'm going to have to choose a company with an address in the US. So I'm just going to make up a new company which matches all of this. I need to give it a primary domain name as well, and this will be an on Microsoft domain name that is going to have to be unique. So we need to see that it goes through the validation process. I then need to give it an address that matches with the region that I'm in, otherwise it'll fail. I won't actually go through and do all of these in the end, because at the end I'll stop the subscription because for this sandbox environment it's actually full. But we'll then switch over to a live subscription that I have instead. So I've chosen Washington, and I also need to have a matching zip code. If any of these credentials don't match, the creation of a customer will fail. I then need to do a primary contact, and that could be typically a customer credentials, but you have to use a company address here. There's no good using something like Hotmail or Gmail or anything like that. And of course you need a phone number, and these needs to be your customer credentials. No communication is actually sent to the customer, it's just a way of being able to identify them. Next, we choose which subscriptions to add in. You can choose either monthly, billing, or you can actually choose some free trial offers that are out there. In this example, I'm going to choose to assign a couple of Office 365 licenses and maybe some enterprise and mobility licenses as well. At this point in time, you can't add any as your subscriptions, and this is due to restrictions that is currently in place in the sandbox environment. But we're expecting to have this fixed soon, so that you can actually find an Azure subscription. Scroll to the very end and click Next. You can now review the information, make sure that's okay, and then click Submit. In this case, I'll cancel. And what I'll do now is I will subsequently switch over to my subscription that I've already created so we can see how this all works. So to find my subscription, I type in my name because I've based my customer name on that. And in here, you can see the subscriptions that I already have. You can see I've got some Azure subscription and some license subscriptions around Office 365. And in here, I can also create additional subscriptions, just as we saw in the previous screen. I'm not going to add any more subscription at this point because I don't actually need to. But we can also have a look at the order history. And in here, you can see a list of everything that I bought and what time I bought it and how many I bought out of it. We can also have a look at Azure Reservations. And Azure Reservations is the new reserved instances that we've deployed. And we can take you through how to create a new reserved instances procurement or buy an Azure reservation. So first of all, you have to choose your segment, and then you have to choose which Azure subscription you want to apply that reserved instances to. Once the catalog is populated, I can now go and choose where I want to deploy these reserved instances. I have to choose a data center, and then I have to choose a number and click Add to Cart. The options I'll see will depend on what services I've got deployed and what SKUs are available in my subscription. Once I've clicked Add to Cart, I then just click Review. And at that point, I've procured those reserved instances. I won't actually do this now because I only have one machine and it's largely switched off. So I'm going to go back into my subscription and we can have a look at some more features and possibilities that I have in here. So the other thing I want to talk about is analytics. And analytics we touched on earlier as well. And in here, you can see I can get information about the details around that customer, around the EMS queue here in this case, or in Office 365. And this tells me how much that individual customer is doing on that subscription. And compare this to what we looked at earlier. We looked at subscriptions across the entire customer base and how all of my customers were performing. Here I can see the details about each individual customer. As I also had earlier, I could also see details about the Office 365 subscription. And here you can see the same details about that Office 365 subscription for that customer rather than the customer base as a whole. And again, this is where we're striving to get towards 100% for maximum utilization for the customer and also for us to drive the perfect balance. We also have the option to assign users and licenses. So in here, if I wanted to, I could create a user directly into the tenant. And this would be, as we talked about earlier, but this is something I can discourage people from doing. Secondly, and this is an important area, this is where we administer all the services that we have for the customer. So in here, I can launch the various different control panels depending on the product and licenses they've deployed. So one of the things I want to highlight with the Azure Management Portal, if you look in the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see the URL that it's accessing. And this is slightly different from what you'd normally see. As you can see, the URL has the portal.azure.com, but at the end of it, it's got this URL of the tenant that I'm going into. This is an Active Directory localizer URL, which means that you can actually go straight into the subscription, the CSP subscription of that customer. This makes it far more efficient, but it also means this is an area where people get a lot of things wrong. So as I now launch the portal using the Open in New tab, which is my favorite way of doing it, I get launched straight into that subscription using the admin on behalf of rights by highlighting that URL that we went to. As we do that, we can see that I get full access to all of the items that are in that subscription and in that tenant. And if you look at the top right corner, you'll see I've used my yarn.meetler@CSP admin credentials. If I, however, go into the portal and I create a new tab, this time I'm doing portal.azure.com without the URL localizer. If I now try to create a resource, I will start to get an error message saying there are no subscriptions in here. And the reason for that is because I've now landed into my CSP admin tenant rather than landing into the customer tenant using my credentials for that. And this is where we get it wrong. So we want to try and get back to the other place. So if I now type in my full URL with the CSP, Meetler CSP on Microsoft.com, hopefully I should land into the right area. And now you can see it'll populate with all the subscriptions just as it did when I launched it from the portal. So by doing this, I can go straight into the customer portal without actually having to go via the CSP portal.
Thanks, Jan. Do we have any resources that may help our listeners?
Yes, Dan, we have lots of resources on this. The great thing about CSP is that pretty much all the documentation starts with partnercenter.microsoft.com. That's where all of that is. Of course, we also have Microsoft Learning, where you can find any information about Azure or any of our other products. And also we have Microsoft Partner Training. And Partner Training is where all upcoming events will be and where you can find out more about on-demand courses that you might want to take as well. Specifically around CSP, the starting point for CSP documentation is as http://docs.microsoft.com/engb/partner-center. This URL will take you straight to the first point of the landing page for the CSP documentation. There are also two Yammer community I'd like to point out. One Yammer community and one standard community. So Yammer community is for all CSP related stuff, and you will get information there also from people in the US. And there's a global community, and communications from Corp will come through that as well. We also have the UK CSP community. By following the URL below, you will find a community just for the people in the UK. And we, and in particular me, will be contributing to that community on a regular basis. So I hope I see you there.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Jan, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and explain how partners can begin reselling the cloud services through the CSP program. Join me next time when I'll be discussing how we begin our transition to the cloud and the migration tools available to help. As always, it's my wish that you've enjoyed the session, and I'd like to remind you that these sessions are driven by you. Simply reach out to me on social media if there's anything that you would like to see, and I will source the experts and make it happen.